Hello everyone, welcome to the third night of the Click, Speak, Connect with Me webinar. My name is Lydia Dolly. I'm the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Click, Speak, Connect. Thank you for joining us. We will be starting the webinar now. We ask you to make sure that you are mute. The mute button should be on the bottom of the screen. Our chat moderator is my personal friend, Nikki, and she will ask your questions. So if you have any questions during the session or during the Q&A session, Nikki will ask a few questions in the 30 minutes Q&A session. And now, this is where you can get excited. I'm giving 3 Pixie Pals to 3 people. Pixie Pal is a world first AAC, portable, customizable, durable, affordable, splash-proof, modular and easy to use light tech communication device. It comes with a body strap and multiple communication boards, or you can print your own communication boards and put them in the snaps. Also, I'm giving a box of Click, Speak, Connect, swag gear and AAC gear to one person. In the CSC box contains a CSC tote bag, a CSC t-shirt, a CSC coffee mug, and 2 AAC awareness bracelets, and a AAC sticker that you can put on your laptop. From Maggie. And I highly recommend checking her out on Instagram at The Bookish SLP. To win one of the CSC giveaways, you take a selfie with the webinar in the background and post it to Instagram or Facebook. Then you write about what you learned from one of the webinar sessions in the description. And on Thursday night during my session, I'll name the 4 winners. Now it's time for the main event. Our third keynote speaker is Naomi Herman. Naomi lives in Ontario, Canada. She usually volunteers in several places, including a hospital, camp, and Challenger baseball. She enjoys reading and writing, politics, and speaking French. She's also learning Dutch very slowly. Currently, she is taking a course on ministry to end with disabilities and their families in the church. She is a part-time AAC user and lives with multiple disabilities and health conditions. Please give a warm welcome to Naomi Herman. Take it away, Naomi.
Hi, thank you for inviting me to speak today. As was said in my introduction, my name is Naomi. I live in Ontario, Canada, in the central part of Canada. I am in my late 40s and only started using AAC about a year and a half ago. AAC and various signing systems have always been a part of my life, at least since the age of 4. I attended camps run by the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, CNI, because I am legally blind and grew up seeing people using sign language with my deaf-blind friends in a tactile way. Things changed at CNI Our segregated camp was closed and we began attending camps for typical kids with one-to-one volunteers. It was at one of these camps where I had my first friend who used symbol-based AAC. I then had a long-time friendship with a boy who was my age who communicated with word approximations and his own homemade sign language. At some point I began volunteering in my church's nursery. There I met a beautiful blue-eyed girl who had high needs. She was non-speaking among other things. This was the first child I would ever work with. I knew then what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to work with kids like her. Later I would want to become a speech-language pathologist. If my Heath ever allows me to, I will become one someday. Late 1970s to the present day I have worked, mostly in a volunteer capacity with kids and adults of various abilities, many of whom were non-speaking. Back then we had communication books and boards. Modeling was not talked about and robust AAC was not heard of. The few speech-generating devices that came out in the single-quote 80s and single-quote 90s for people with complex communication needs were not very good. It wasn't until probably after 2010 when I began joining Facebook groups about AAC that I heard the word modeling and learned about partner-assisted scanning for the first time as well as robust AAC. What my world working with the kids and adults could have been if I had had this knowledge. I so wish I could go back in time knowing what I do now. Then my personal need for AAC became apparent. Around 3 or so years ago my brain would occasionally not allow the words that were in my head to come out of my mouth. One would think that for someone who talks and talks and talks this would have been alarming, but because of all the knowledge from my huge interest in AAC from about grade 5 up it was not. I knew that there were other ways to speak. I knew that there were good, robust AAC apps that would allow me to say anything in my head that I wanted without having to use verbal speech at all. I was blessed by a friend who found some very special people who I only know as the elves, Santa's helpers, who bought me the iPad I needed to get the right AAC system for myself. I worked hard to save up for it. Proloquo2Go was the system that seemed the right one for me. The elves also got me a case with a strap, and from the very beginning my iPad went everywhere with me. I knew that I always needed my alternate voice with me. I also knew that if I was using verbal speech, signed English or Proloquo2Go that I did not change as a person. A mentor I had at the beginning of my personal AAC journey suggested that I journal with Proloquo2Go, so that I would be able to learn where my words were. I began by making up sentences using practical AAC's core words of the week, and that got boring. Someone suggested that I get fun simple kids journal prompts. That got more interesting. I took creative writing at one point in time, so I got to be a bit more creative. I still try and do this as many nights as possible. I also went out and about for a few days, deciding to use my device as much as I could without verbal speech. All these things prepared me for the first time I would truly rely on my device. About a year ago, I had to go to the hospital for an emergency psychiatric admission. I was almost completely non-speaking. I called a friend, said 2 words to him to get him on Messenger, and we planned to go to the hospital. It was a very hard day, but a day where I was really proud of myself. I got through triage speaking only a few words. My friend did not speak for me. Between my device, gestures and signs, I got through triage all on my own. It was then I knew that even though I had far less independence than I did before becoming a wheelchair user in 1998, I could still speak for myself no matter what my brain decided to do. I was emotionally not well, but very proud. That is my AAC journey up until this point in time. I have used my device in church and other places and found acceptance and understanding most of the time. Thank you very much for coming to hear about my first few years as a part-time AAC user.
That. So, amazing. That's so amazing. Amazing. Does anyone have any? That's so amazing. Just questions. That's so amazing. Does anyone have any questions?
I can't read the chat thing, so somebody is gonna have to tell me if people have questions.
That's my job. So Jennifer asked if you could please tell her the name of the storytelling and journal app that you use.
Oh, hang on.
space. Backspace. Backspace. Space. For children and teenagers. Wordshop is a homeschooling curriculum where you can get free journal prompts for children and teenagers.
It's a website. It's called Word Shop. Right Shop. Sorry, I said the wrong thing. And they have a mailing list where they'll send you school year's worth of writing prompts for free.
I have a question. A question. W. What? A. D. Advice would you give to A. P. A. R. Parent that G. Have has a child who is not wants wanting to why use them their D device. I have a question. What advice would you give to a parent that has a child who is not wanting to use their device?
First, I would make that the child be is seeing EAC used as by as many people as wherever, they go, and that they new line, a backspace, have, there, EAC, when, where, it, can, be, used, by, them. First, I would make sure that the child is seeing AAC used as much as possible by as many people as possible wherever they go, and that they always have their AAC system where it can be used by them.
Naomi, could you repeat one more time what that app was called, the storytelling journal app?
Great
Great
job.
job.
It's
Okay.
one word.
Okay, one word.
One word.
Does anyone have any more questions before I End it. Does anyone have any more questions before I end it?
I am not seeing any more questions. Oh, wait, 1 second. We got one. Katrina wants to know, how does your vision affect your AAC usage? She says she has a student with low vision who uses an AAC device.
Okay, I'm going to answer this verbally because it'll take me a long time to do it with AAC. I use a very small grid size, so I have 30 buttons per page. But with Proloco to Go, you can go down 3 pages and then go over and have another 3 pages for one folder. So that's still a lot of buttons. I use a lot of color because I find it easier for me to find things if I make all my folders different colors. I kind of started with the modified Fitzgerald key and then modified it a whole lot more. With Proloco to Go, you can edit a lot. Some systems you can't, like LAMP's Words for Life and Speak for Yourself are not as editable. LAMP would be a good system for me, except for my brain doesn't get the symbols. So if I had a client who had to use it, I would learn to use it. But for me, it wasn't the right system. So a motor planning system is a good option for someone who's visually impaired. And LAMP does have a visually impaired option as a dedicated device. Proloco to Go is a good option because you can make your grid size any way you want. Yeah, Cough Drop does have a motor. I did see that. Cough Drop does have a motor planning component, but it's not as motor planned as LAMP. Cough Drop was the first app I used, and I couldn't modify the colors as much as I wanted to. And then I also have folders in multiple places and words in multiple places to make it easier for me, because I'm sometimes navigating. I sometimes make, like, I divided my things folder into multiple folders because there was just one big folder with a whole bunch of things. So I've got folders and subfolders, but then I've got like things like little words and actions and stuff all over the place so that they're easy to get to. But it would depend on how much usable vision your student has, how much contrast they need, and how much memory, how much they can memorize, what kind of a system you would have to go with. Because some people couldn't handle the colors that I have, because I mean, I have to be careful with the contrast too. Sometimes I'll put 2 colors together and go, yeah, I can't see that at all. Sometimes I have to change the letter coloring on the words so that I can see it with the colors that I have as the background and the border of my symbol. And I like an app with lots of symbols. I didn't go with TouchChat because there were too many words with no symbols. And I find the symbols really help me. I've also started enlarging the print on some of my folders, but I have to be careful not to make the symbols too small. So you really have to work with your student, asking them if they like changes, if they don't like changes. Because vision impairment is so diverse. If you're dealing with CVI, that's even more diverse.
Right. Now, I'm working with a K kiddo W with C V I C V I 2 and weave. I'm working with a K U kiddo W with C V I and
Or made this point earlier about people in congregations who
Sorry.
will not accept your position if it is not a pro-Trump position.
Somehow my radio came on. Quite sure how that worked. Let's just turn that off.
R trying to get him a communication device. But the two G T R I D S grids T H R O Q throw H I M him off do you has have L I less than K R E like F G R I D grids on your D device. I'm working with a kiddo with CVI and we're trying to get him a communication device, but the grids throw him off. Do you have like grids on your device?
The one thing that I've seen work really well with kids with CVI is Pod. Either high or low tech. Or I would go with Lamp VI because they have high contrast symbols and tactile markers on their dedicated device.
Thank you.
CVI is so very different and so very many different kids that unless I knew a lot more about the kid, it's so hard because you can have vision out of just part of one eye or out of just the center or out of just one side. I've only learned this from the CVI Scotland website. If you want to learn anything about CVI, go hang out there for about 5 hours. I'm not kidding. And then what I've read on different Facebook groups. Because I had not heard of CVI until I started joining AAC Facebook groups. Yes, that one. Just make sure you have a lot of time.
I have to check it out. Thank
I
you.
never even got through it because I lost my place. I think somebody else asked something, but I couldn't read it all before it went away. Something about what I would say about my disability, but I couldn't read the rest.
It was, how would you describe disability and AAC to a child, both AAC user and their peers who can speak well?
I would start off by, when I do actually, I'm going to speak because I take a long time using AAC because I don't use it a lot. I actually go to a camp run by Scouts Canada, but I'm a non-scouting volunteer. And I do disability awareness every year with the kids. And I was a Brownie leader with Girl Guides of Canada, and I was a Scout leader with Scouts Canada, but I am not anymore. When I did disability awareness with my Brownies, who had to do it every year because they liked what I did so much, even if they'd already done it and they'd gotten the badge, I always started out with how we're all the same. I get a big piece of poster paper and I'd say, take away disabilities. How are we all the same? And the kids would start naming hair color, eye color, and then I'd get the kids to describe me. It was interesting because most of the time they did not refer to my disabilities. Even though I used a wheelchair and I wear very thick glasses. And then we would talk about disabilities and how people with disabilities have the same likes and dislikes and feelings and things like that. But I'd also do things like when we did a fire drill, I would say to them, okay, if I couldn't walk, which I can, how would you get me out of this building in the event of a fire? So the kids had to learn about accessibility and disability, but they had to learn about it in a way that wasn't forced on them. And then I had 2 years ago, because the camp was canceled this year due to obvious reasons, I had 2 older youth come. The kids who come to camp are American and Canadian, Scouts and Guides, and Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. Scouts in Canada are co-ed, so Guides are not. And I had some kids come up to me and they were using my manual wheelchair, and I always have them use it on grass to give them a little bit of a challenge. And they said, man, that must be hard. And then it suddenly dawned on me, I said, but I haven't told you all the good things about having a wheelchair. And I started telling them that my wheelchair let me go to the store, and it let me go to church, and it let me go to camp. And without it, I would be in pain and unable to walk most of my life. And the same goes for AAC. Look at the things that you can do with AAC. AAC is just another way of speaking. It's no better or no worse than speech. It's just different. And hand the kids, I had the kids the year I did AAC, which was 2 years ago. I did AAC as my theme. I always have a disability theme and then another theme. And then the kids always get to try out my white canes and my wheelchairs. Because that's what draws them. When they see other kids playing with my white canes and my wheelchairs, they come over and join my activity. And I had made up just word-based communication board, paper-based, word-based communication boards with the promises and mottos of the different organizations that came to camp. And I had the kids find them on the communication board. So they had the experience of having to see that it was a slow process. But they also learned about scouting at the same time. They were reminded of what they were called to do as scouts and guides and Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. And then another year I asked them, what would you want or need if you had a disability? And some of the answers I got blew me away. The kids were brilliant. The kids were absolutely brilliant. I still have the answers they gave me from the first year I went, which was 7 years ago. And then there was another question I had. Oh, yeah, how are we all the same? That was the other question I had was, how are we all the same without, and how are we all different? And so the kids come and some of the leaders come too, and they learn too, and they try my White Canes wheelchairs too. So it's an interesting mix of older youth, like not the oldest youth, but the kind of the tweens and the younger teens, and the leaders who come along with them who learn. And I only get like 15 minutes with the kids. So I have a helper who comes to camp with me because I can't go on my own. I have to bring all my own food because I can't eat anything artificial, and it just gets really complicated. So I have a helper who happens to be like over 70 years old. Great guy. And he comes with me, and he used to be a teacher, so he has taken all the Scouts Canada training that he requires to go to camp, and he does part of it and I do part of it. So that's kind of the way I explain it. Disabilities. And then the kids ask questions. I mean, I put up one year I put up a whole bunch of invisible disabilities and then wrote, if you have something you think I should add, come see me. And one kid walked up to me and said, I think you should add, wait a minute, I have to think of what it was. Crohn's disease. And I said, I don't know very much about Crohn's disease, so you're going to have to tell me what to write. And I wrote exactly what the kid told me. He had Crohn's disease.
That's awesome.
I really missed camp this year.
Hopefully. It will. Come. Back. Next year. Hopefully it will come back next year.
I'm hoping. If I were explaining to an AAC user, I would just tell them they talk to everybody in a different way, but it's talking just like everybody else.
Thank you so much for sharing your incredible story. Naomi, you're so terrific. Now we are going to end our third session of Click, Speak, Connect with me webinar. I hope you had a fabulous time and learned a lot. Tomorrow will be the fourth and final session where me, Lydia, I'm going to talk about my life with cerebral palsy, and I'm going to have a special guest for the Q&A session. I will give you a hint. She is related to me, and she thinks that I look like her. So come on back here at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, 5 Pacific Standard Time. Also, don't forget to post a selfie on Facebook or Instagram regarding what you have learned from tonight's session to qualify for the giveaway. Please use hashtag CSC with me 2020 or tag ClickSpeakConnect. We will see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.